My name's Nisha Jackson, and I am the middle, only daughter child. I have one husband, Rick Jackson, and I have two daughters, Mackenzie and Jordan. Jordan is 17, well, almost 17, and Mackenzie's 14. I remember my mom crying a lot. I remember mom crying for months, and I remember Nana being really upset that we moved to Salem, and now we were so far away from sweet home. But I also remember mom and dad feeling like it was sort of a new beginning and kind of excited about it. So those are some of the things I remember about them moving to Salem. Wow, the early days in A&W. I'm going to say that my fondest memory in the early days of A&W would be standing on the pickle bucket at the front counter and trying to mimic the person who was taking the orders at the front counter, and just thinking, I want to be like that person someday. I want to be able to take orders at the front counter and be able to serve people. That's probably my best memory of the early days of A&W. Well, this is really sick, but I'm going to say that my first day of official work at A&W was on my 10th birthday. In fact, that's what I wanted for my birthday. That's how sick it is. I wanted Dad to let me work at A&W for the day. So that's what I did. Age 10, December 31st was my first day of work at A&W. My husband is Rick Jackson, and my oldest daughter is Jordan. She's 16, and my youngest daughter is Mackenzie, and she's 14. I worked with a few of my friends at A&W, and I'm going to say that was a problem for me. And I'm going to say it was actually a big problem for me because I got fired twice by Dana, who's probably listening to this movie right now. I got fired twice for laughing, and that's the problem with working with friends, especially if you have a laughing addiction. And so that was an issue for me. I was terminated twice for laughing too much with my friends. Boy, I'd love to say pleasant, but I'm thinking not super pleasant. But I have to say, as an adult, I'm really glad I worked for my father because it's taught me so much about how to treat my employees and learning about expectations. But, you know, the one thing about Dad that I think everybody that's worked for my dad could relate to is the intensity at which he works. And sometimes if you're not enjoying being around intense people or the intensity of the moment, it's really intimidating to have his feet go across the floor really loud and you know you're next. You know you are the next person that's going to get it. You're not getting things out of that chute fast enough and onto those trays and out into the restaurant. Or possibly you're not saying the right thing when you're ordering, when you're taking the order. In fact, one thing I remember is Dad saying, "You can't say at the end of the order, 'Is that all?'" And I have to say, to this day, that is my biggest pet peeve when somebody takes my order in the restaurant, when they say, and they all say it now, "Is that all?" You should say, "Is that everything?" That was what it was like working for Dad. I learned that you should never quit. And it doesn't matter how much the heat is turned up or how hard it seems like your life is, or that you can't go one more day, or you don't even know how you're going to make payroll. Because, you know, at the dinner table, we heard all of the stories. We heard the bad employees. We heard the person who was stealing from us, from Dad. We heard the person who didn't show up for work that day, and they really needed that person. And he never gave up. And Mom never gave up listening to all of it. And I just think that that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned in business, is that no matter how horrible your life seems in business that particular day or that particular month, you have to keep going. Wow, my relationship with Dad, I have to say, was totally different than my relationship with Mom, as it probably is with every family, right? But I'm going to say that my relationship with my dad was definitely, I probably learned more life lessons from Dad, and I probably learned more personal lessons from Mom. And so, I mean, that would probably explain how my relationship was quite different with both of them, and so necessary to have both sides or both input from both my mom and dad. So I would say that my mom was more the nurturing type, as a mother should be, and things were a lot more personal, more worried about, you know, teaching me how to cook and teaching me how to clean and making sure that I felt okay about what was going on in my life. And Dad, not so much involved in the personal aspect of my life, but very much involved in making sure that I understood about the big lessons of life, which is so important to have both aspects teaching you that on a daily basis. Well, I'm going to say some of Mom's strengths in being able to get through those years when it was crazy. I mean, we all know that life was so busy, as is ours today. But I'm going to say that probably one of Mom's strengths is this, that she realized early on, I don't think I ever heard her verbalize this, but the grass is not always greener. I think that's something Mom just intuitively knew and really stuck with over the years. That, I'm going to say there were a lot of hot men after Mom over the years. I think she was probably tempted a few times, as we all are. But I think that that's something she always knew in her heart. The grass is not always greener. And I remember one time, Rick, my husband, said to me, "The big time's where you're at." And that just really made a huge impression on me. And I think about Mom a lot just in that saying, the big time's where you're at and the grass is not always greener. I think about Mom just sort of sticking it out, taking care of us kids, and helping Dad and really nurturing Dad to be able to do a bigger business and having our lives be crazy and sometimes just not know what tomorrow will bring. And I think that that's sort of an important concept for all of us in marriage today. Wow. There's so many lessons that Mom and Dad have given me over the years that allow me to do what I do because I practice medicine, so I see patients and take care of them. And so that requires a huge amount of empathy and compassion and personalism. But I also run a business with 60 employees and have several other investments that Rick and I work on together. And that takes a huge amount of business knowledge and commitment and sort of stick-to-itiveness, So I'm going to say that being able to have both of those from my parents is like the perfect combination for what I do. And I'm also going to say that it's so interesting now, especially that I'm 45, looking back at all the little life lessons that we even learned at the dinner table. Listening to Mom and Dad talk about some of their struggles and being really open about things that they were struggling with. And they were just talking to each other. Mom and Dad they weren't really talking to us, but we were all listening. And I think about some of those lessons that I now share with my kids in hopes that they will be able to use those in their business down the road and certainly in their marriage down the road. So I think that those are probably some of the most important things that I learned with just watching Mom and Dad from a business standpoint. So when I think about the struggles that I had in college, and there were a lot of them. I was so not prepared for college, and I honestly didn't know how I was going to get through. I remember calling home regularly, sometimes nightly, but definitely every Sunday I would call home and telling Mom, and sometimes Dad would get on the phone, "I can't do it. I cannot, I don't get this. I'm not going to get through." And I'm going to say the first 3 years of college were really difficult for me. And I remember Dad saying these words to me, "You have to do it. You made a commitment. We're paying a ton of money for you to be there and you can't quit." And then, so I needed to hear that, and I've needed to hear that a lot of times over the years, whether it be my first time doing a national radio program, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna vomit. I'm gonna vomit before I get my first word out of my mouth. And I always remember Dad saying those words, "You have to do it. You cannot quit, you have to do it." But the great thing is I always had Mom coming in right behind him saying, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry that you're so sad, but you really have to stay there, honey. You can't come home." And so, how cool is it that you could have both? And I think a lot of people do, but I just needed to hear that. I just needed to hear that you have to stay there. And I've come back to that so many times in my life, whether it be, starting a new business and wondering like Dad did, how are you going to make payroll? Or are we going to schedule enough patient visits? Or starting a new laboratory and wondering how in the world I'm going to learn all the regulations there are to run a laboratory, or doing a national speaking program. There's times when I think I have no idea what I'm doing, kind of like what I said in college. But you know what? You just put one foot in front of the other and you learn it, and most of the time you wing it, and we all know Dad was winging it most of the time. I mean, geez, he started a restaurant after driving a log truck. with no experience. He just figured it out. So I just think that that's been an important lesson for me over the years, is just keep going. Never turn back, always look forward, and just give yourself some credit for doing that.